I went to the pursuit of truth. I mean, I wasn't going to cover this because I assumed Al Shifa Hospital was not being used now. Maybe it is still being used. I suppose it goes to show that how desensitised we're becoming now, or I'm becoming, that thinking that, well, it's not, I don't need to cover this because, well, I've already covered that Israel going inside a hospital. And like I want to say at the very offstart, this isn't about Israelis in general, the Israeli population or Jews or anything like that. I don't even like the tags, but in the system that we live with, we all got these titles. I'm talking about the government, those particular people who are involved in this. And there may be justifications, well, they're giving justifications that is because Hamas are in there, and then, you know, obviously that makes the hospital, I guess, under international law, a legitimate target. It just, I was saying that it's strange how I'm just thinking that, well, it's just a hospital being attacked. There's nothing new in that. Whereas it shouldn't be like that, should it? Because this is a hospital where people are meant to be treated. But it just seems like now it's just ongoing, these things. And I know that, like, from Israel's point of view, maybe, obviously, if they see that there's, you know, obviously, if terrorists are using hospitals, maybe it's not being functioning as a hospital anymore. I don't know, since people were moved to the Rafah side, the south side. So I don't know exactly because they haven't really been telling us very much about the hospital. Whereas at the beginning of this conflict, we were always seeing Al Shifa Hospital and having footage from there. And obviously the terrorists may be using this because they think that it's a place that under international law is protected and therefore they feel it's safe. And of course, they're not allowed to do that either. I'm not trying to come down on one side or the other. You know, this is a situation where it seems like there's no actual good side out of this. And the only thing that's really happening is that a lot of innocent people are getting killed. Well, I suppose people are getting killed generally. Well, I don't like the idea of any people getting killed, to be honest. But unfortunately, in the system we live within, we've bought into this idea where we can condone war and condone killing of each other because this one set of land is owned by this person, this and the other, and then we've got agreements with each other so we can fight and kill each other, and whoever kills the most or wins, or the other one who gives up, and then we can sort of all shake hands, sign pieces of paper and get on with each other, or hate each other forever and then have another war later. I mean, how stupid is this? Really, this way that we live. So this is another example. 3 of these pursuits of truth I've made today, 3 examples in different ways to show the system, the way that we live, the way that we treat each other is just not right, is just not working, and it's got serious problems and consequences for us all. Anyway, so I thought I'd play this, and it also has a talk about the famine aspect, which is, they're saying now 70%, I mean, I don't know who the figures are coming from, whether it's the UN or who, 70% of people could be in famine very, very shortly. I'm surprised they're not already in it because of the siege mentality that was put on the place. I don't know. It's not looking good for humans, is it really? Well, here it is.
Good afternoon. The United Nations Food Agency says that famine is now imminent in the north of Gaza. A World Food Programme report backed by the UN says that 70% of the Gazan population is at risk. Of those, 210,000 are already in the worst category, that is phase 5, described as catastrophic hunger. The report also says an Israeli offensive in Rafah, where the majority of Gaza's displaced people now are, could drive more than 1.1 million people, that's 50% of the entire population, into catastrophic hunger. Well, speaking at a conference on humanitarian aid, the EU's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, accused Israel of using starvation as a weapon of war.
In Gaza, we are no longer on the brink of famine. We are in a state of famine. It's not a flood, it's not an earthquake. It's entirely man-made. By whom? Let's dare to say it. By whom? I'm coming from Washington, and I dare to say, well, yes, Israel is provoking famine. Oh, how do you say that? What evidence do you have? Come on, what evidence do I have? Hundreds of trucks are waiting to enter And it's absolutely imperative to make crossing points work effectively and open additional crossing point. And it's just a matter of political will.
Meanwhile, Israel has launched...
I just want to pick up on that, because my only worry with this is that we do know there has historically been, obviously most notably in the Second World War, a European, what's the word I can use? Quite a lot of European anti-Semitic, what's the word? You know what I'm trying to say. Obviously, we know that during the Second World War, Germany, Austria, whichever it was, what you want to put Hitler down as, was didn't like the Jewish population. I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about historically them. And we know from my understanding of history when I was at school that Europe also was not very keen on the Jewish population, hence why after the Second World War, hence why they told us that during the Second World War, Churchill and them knew about what was going on in the concentration camps and didn't tell the people and didn't do anything about it. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what we were taught. You can fact check that, of course. I suppose I shouldn't say it if I don't really know it. That's, I guess, the problem and beauty of YouTube. So that may not or may be true. But what I'm trying to say is that, of course, it's possible that people could use this. You know, if you didn't like Israel or Jewish people, not talking about me, there are people out there, politicians, spokespersons, etc. You could use this and sort of flavour it in your, and be sort of legitimate in your attacks of this, but really it's about yourself putting across your anti-Semitic views, but clouding it in maybe some truth and lies. Now, I'm not trying to defend or whatever, but I do worry about that, because I did hear, I can't remember who it was, there was I think it was actually the Irish, one of the Irish, is it Prime Minister, the lady, she said something about the slaughter of Gazans that needs to stop, something like that. She used the word slaughter, and it's not the first time I've heard that word, and I feel that it's probably not the best word to use, because slaughter shows some kind of what's the word, attempt, you know, that you're doing it on purpose. You know, you know, if my picture of when you use the word slaughter would be if you had like a knife and you wielded it in, you know, much more like, I guess, the terrorists, I would use that word there. Maybe I'm wrong in the sense that I'm seeing like barbaric weapons as being slaughter and dropping bombs not being slaughter. I don't know. I suppose you could make an argument that that's why I'm feeling it not that way, because of my brain has been determined to see that slaughter has to be something where it's, you know, has some kind of violence, has some sort of vehemency, has some kind of visceral sort of, some kind of, you know, you're standing in front and you're murdering people like serial killers would slaughter people, you know, and you would stab them lots of times and all that kind of thing you see as slaughter. I wouldn't use the word slaughter for like dropping bombs, but I suppose if you were doing it purposely, you could slaughter a population, you know, like with bombs and things. So, but just for me, that word, I felt a bit out of place using that word. And I'm not trying to sort of defend any side of this, that and the other. Words are very important. And what I'm trying to say is that we have to be careful. You know, it's easy to say, remember, these figures, they're coming from the terrorists who run Palestine. Obviously, the UN has verified some of them and other NGOs and agencies. But this is where it's very murky, the situation that we're in, of knowing that there will be people out there who are probably anti-Semitic, that don't like Jewish people or Israel, who will come out and sort of use this as their platform of like, oh, look what they're doing. And, you know, it's a bit like those types of people that when they don't like someone, they then will start, you know, they will be the first one to talk about it and say, oh, blah, blah, blah. And it's because they don't really like them. That's why they're saying it. So, and of course that could blur our truth. So it did sort of worry me a little bit when I was hearing that sort of how he's speaking. It wasn't very, I would say, statementsly. The person you had before. I'm not saying either about these people that they're making anti-Semitic comments or anything like that. I'm just saying it made me question why they were speaking in this kind of way, and it made me think about, well, we have to be careful, because it's there is a lot of people out there who, like with anything, like with the, with any race or with any kind of difference from, people who get onto these bandwagons, and it's really about their own hatred that they're trying to profess, and normally they can't profess it because no one's talking about it, and then when suddenly something happens, they can all say these things, which is not what any of us want. What we want is love, not hate. Love or hatred for none, as the Ahmadiyya movement puts it. Anyway, let's move on to this end a bit of this.
Raid on the Al Shifa Hospital in the north of Gaza. The IDF issued this video, which they say shows part of the raid. It says it shows militants firing towards IDF troops. Figures released earlier by the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry say that 31,000 Palestinians have now been killed across the Strip, nearly 74,000 injured in the Israeli offensive following the Hamas attacks of the 7th of October. Well, this is social media footage taken at around 3 a.m. local time and verified by Sky News. It shows smoke coming from the hospital area. The video was taken from a balcony where both gunfire and military aircraft could be heard. Well, our Middle East correspondent Asda Bunkel is in Jerusalem with the latest.
The quantity of aid that is needed is not getting in there. Now, there is a war of words between Israel and the international community. You saw Joseph Borrell there, but the Americans, the British, really, you name it, most of the West has been very critical of Israel for not letting enough aid into Gaza. Israel, though, says that it is letting increasing amount of aid in. The problem is that the maritime routes, and we've seen one ship dock and unload its aid, but that was just one single ship. More are yet to follow, and the American project that would estimated deliver around 2 million meals a day, well, that's a couple of months off being up and running yet. Airdrops, are one way of getting aid in, but they're not that effective. They're not always that precise in where they can land, and so they're often seen as a last resort. And so it's about the land routes. And currently there are only 2 land borders, one into Egypt and one through Israel. But Israel has to check the aid going in through both of those borders. And there are a lot of complaints from international organizations that Israel is rejecting items from going in because they believe they're for dual use. They could end up in Hamas hands. But a lot of those items, like incubators for children, for example, ventilation devices, international organizations are questioning why they're not being allowed in. But my final point on that is that Israel did do a test run on a new border into northern Gaza a couple of days ago, but there's been no decision or no word yet on whether that's going to become a permanent new route into northern Gaza or not. If it did, then that could help relieve some of the suffering in the north. So a lot of people will remember Al Shifa because in November it became the focus of a major battle when the Israelis said they needed to go in and uncover Hamas tunnels and Hamas infrastructure there. They did that at the time. They left it, moved on, and now the Israelis are saying they have to move back there because Hamas have gone back in there. And so it's the scene of very heavy fighting today. We can't get in touch with anybody. We've been trying to get in touch with people there. Communications seem to be down. There's an estimated 30,000 people there, patients, medical staff, and civilians just sheltering. And so again, Al Shifa Hospital is concerning a lot of the international community.
Alistair Bunker reporting there from Jerusalem. Now, the World Health Organization chief has also voiced concern about the raid on Al Shifa, saying in a tweet, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus said, hospitals should never be battlegrounds. We're worried about the situation at Al Shifa, which is endangering health workers, patients and civilians. Well, let's bring in now Tarek Yeserovich, spokesperson for the World Health Organization. Tarek, it's always good to speak with you. Thanks very much for making the time today. Just first of all, on that tweet that's come from Dr. Ghebreyesus, what do you understand the situation is currently at Al Shifa?
Well, thank you, Kamali. We are trying to get more information from health workers inside Shifa, but we have seen on social media scenes and footages of destruction, of bombing. This will necessarily make things more complicated for people who are still in that area in north of Gaza. We have been last time able to get to Shifa Hospital a week ago to bring some fuel and medical supplies. But what we have seen, and that's what we are seeing in all the other hospitals, it's a lack of supplies, lack of food, lack of fuel, lack of medical experts, people who are looking for shelter and who are hungry, asking us first of all for food. And let's just remind that today the famine has been characterized as imminent, especially in north of Gaza where Shifa is happening. So basically you have hungry people, you have sick people, you have hospitals that are not functioning or barely functioning, that are becoming a battleground. That will obviously bring more casualties and more death, unfortunately.
And Tarek, do you agree with the words of Josep Borrell, the EU foreign policy chief, that Israel is provoking this famine?
Well, we need more food in. It has been just released today, the analysis of experts that 1 child out of 3 at the age under 2 in northern Gaza is acutely malnourished. That people especially in northern Gaza, are skipping their meals for entire days and nights because there is no enough food. So there is simply no enough food coming in. We need all crossings to be open. We need full and unhindered access to Gaza to bring food, fuel, medical supplies. And above all, Kamali, we need ceasefire. Because even if we bring those things in, as long as there is a bombardment, as long as there are military operations, we will see more suffering and more deaths.
Yeah, and the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, says that this is entirely man-made. I'll put it to you again. Do you agree with Josep Borrell that Israel's provoking this famine?
We are calling on Israel to make sure that we have a full access and that we can bring more things in for sure. We have seen delays at checkpoints. We have seen our mission requests for security guarantees to reach hospitals being denied. We need that access as humanitarians to help health workers in those hospitals that are still functional to do their job.
And Tariq, by the same token, then, of course, this is the second time that we've seen fighting around Al Shifa. The Israelis say that they went in there for a terror operation. I don't know if you have contacts with Hamas and the leadership through some of your organization, but what pressure is being put on that group to stop the fighting within and around health facilities?
Well, international humanitarian law is clear. Health facilities should not be militarized in any way. That should be safe havens for patients and for health workers. We, as a WHO, our job is really to try to help health system working. We don't have any evidence on hospitals being used, but we have not been looking for that it has been used for military purposes. What we have seen is more than 400 attacks on health in Gaza since October, with more than 600 people who died during those attacks.
Tariq, just to pick you up on that, so you're saying that the WHO have no evidence of hospitals being used as military bases, as we are led to believe by the Israelis?
Well, we do not look for any such evidence. When we get to these hospitals, we try to bring supplies, we try to see what is needed, we try to provide assistance to health workers and to transfer patients. So we cannot confirm or deny that there is a military use by any side of the hospitals, but we have seen that hospitals are being bombed and that people have been dying inside hospital grounds.
You were there just a week ago. What situation did you find? Did you find no evidence of weapons being held? Did you find no evidence of the tunnels beneath Al Shifa? You'll know, Tariq, that many people will find that hard to believe when the Israelis are telling us that these places are being used for those facilities.
Again, when our teams come in, they are there just for a very short period of time, bringing fuel, bringing medical supplies, talking with health workers, trying to see what is needed for next time we come, and trying to see if some patients have to be transferred to hospitals in the south. So again, from our teams, we have not seen, nor we have been looking for any military. It's really not our mandate. Our mandate is to help health workers and patients.
And Tariq, finally then, of course, within your mandate is making sure that people have enough food and security. It was reported on the 5th of March by Dr. Ghebreyesus that 10 children have died as a result of a lack of food. I hate to have tallies, but what's your current estimate as to how many children have died because of starvation?
From the Ministry of Health of Gaza, there were more than 20 children that have died so far from malnutrition. And this is something that should not be acceptable, that we have babies dying out of hunger. Hunger and malnutrition was not a problem in Gaza before October. So definitely we are in a situation that is a man-made and that can be reversed if we have a full access and especially if we have a ceasefire.
Okay, Tariq Yaselovich from the World Health Organization. Always appreciate speaking to you, Tariq. Thanks for making the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now it is.
I mean, I don't know. The journalist was obviously trying to get him to, like, oh, you haven't seen any tunnels and guns? Almost like to say, well, if he hadn't seen any, then that means that what Israel not telling the truth. Obviously, the WHO aren't going to be going around looking for tunnels and guns. They're talking about looking to feed people and healthcare and stuff, isn't it? So it's a bit, you could see what the journalists are trying to do there. And this is what worries me, you see. I'm not trying to say anything by that because that's his job. His job is to, play devil's advocate and sort of create these like pictures and, the story from the West is, especially because what we're seeing is obviously geared towards, look what's happening in Gaza. Isn't this bad and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that it is. I'm not trying to diminish from anything that. But my worry is these little bits that come in. Like why are you asking the WHO whether they've seen weapons or tunnels? As if they're going to go around looking for tunnels. If that was the case, they wouldn't need these special operations to go and do these things. They'd ask the WHO. It was a bit... And I think that I have to be careful of the language of like man-made. I know I talked about this previously. I didn't use that term because I didn't want to use that kind of term. I just want to say it's not natural that what's happening there. Of course, they're using figures from Gaza's health ministry, which of course run by Hamas, a terrorist organisation prescribed in the West. So therefore, like with any war, like I always say, truth is the first casualty, and therefore do we know if these numbers are accurate and what the real picture is? It'd be very easy for us just to believe and, to be shown things and to us to not see it. I'm not trying to come down any side or this, that and the other. I do believe that it is there's terrible things happening in Gaza and hundreds of thousands, or tens of thousands, say, of innocent people are dying along with these terrorists. Of course, from Israel's point of view, they would say, well, if the terrorists just gave themselves up, then this would all be over. And of course, I know that's a simplified view of things, and terrorists are probably not going to do that because they don't want to face whatever recriminations, which could be, who knows what, whether international law is going to be followed when they're caught, or if they ever get caught alive. But at the end of the day, if this is Ramadan, and people are fasting. I don't know if they would be able to fast in war. Really, they shouldn't be. But what I mean, it's just it would be just so easy if Hamas could give themselves up. I mean, Israel are obviously determined to kill every single Hamas person they possibly can. They can't kill the ideology, and a lot of them are hiding in Qatar anyway. Just like the generals and the Western leaders who hide in their bunkers in war and send their troops out. It's exactly the same. There's no honour in this. Just people dying and starving. I don't know. It's very messy, this situation, isn't it? But just, I don't know. It just is to me, it just shows you the system of how we see each other, the system of how we live with each other. This is another case point to prove that it's just not working this way, and we need to find a better way, because we need to love each other and live with each other better for collectively and individually our one and only existence. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.